Here's something you probably didn't expect to hear on an improv channel. The same skills comedians use to make things up on stage are now being used by doctors, therapists, and educators to treat anxiety, improve communication, and even lower stress hormones. Yeah, improv is literally changing lives. Hey everyone, I'm Jeff from Unscripted Genius Improv. And this conversation you're about to hear was generated from my own research and formatted using Notebook LM, Google's AI research tool. And here's the thing. Before you dive into creating projects like this, the real secret isn't the tech. It's having a strong knowledge base about your subject first. The deeper your understanding, the better tools like Notebook LM can help you structure it into something meaningful. So, whether you're a creator, educator, or just improv curious, this episode shows how a few simple improv principles, like yes and celebrating mistakes, are transforming how we learn, connect, and heal. Let's jump in.
All right, let's start with something you probably connect with. Comedy clubs, maybe? That phrase. Making things up on the spot.
Yeah, spontaneous comedy.
Exactly. But what if I told you that exact skill, improvisation, is now, well, a serious tool, like an evidence-based intervention in healthcare, medical training, even professional development?
It's a pretty wild shift, isn't it? And that's what we're diving into today, applied improvisation or improv, and its, frankly, surprisingly deep impact.
Yeah, so for this deep dive, we've pulled together quite a range of sources. We're looking at studies on group therapy, say for stuttering or autism spectrum disorder.
Right, and also research on training health professionals, doctors, speech-language pathologists, SLPs, often using, simulated patients. And then there's the broader discussion about improv just as a tool for professional growth.
So our goal here, our mission, if you like, is to really unpack how these, well, sometimes funny principles from improv actually tackle some really big modern problems. Things like massive professional anxiety, feeling overwhelmed by information.
And that constant need for better non-technical skills, right? The soft skills.
Precisely.
And that's the key point, I think. Traditional education, it hammers the technical stuff, the what you need to know for a job. But improv, it really digs into the how.
How you interact.
Exactly, how you do the job. It teaches those often undervalued skills. Active listening, real collaboration, thinking on your feet, empathy, stuff that formal training sometimes just assumes you have.
Okay, let's unpack that before we get to the really compelling data. What's the actual core thing here? What makes improv work off stage? I mean, we're talking about improvisational theater, making up dialogue, scenes, no script.
Well, the engine behind it is really the culture it creates. It's built on goodwill, mutual support. But the absolute bedrock, the thing that makes it all tick, is this concept, yes and.
Right, yes and. We've all heard that phrase tossed around. But why is it so foundational, especially in like a serious professional setting? It seems almost too simple.
It is simple, but deceptively powerful in practice. Yes and basically means you accept whatever idea is put out there, that's the yes, and then you immediately build on it, that's the and. It forces cooperation.
Okay, but hang on. Does that mean you just agree with everything? Like if someone in a meeting suggests something genuinely terrible, you just say, yes, and let's do that terrible thing. That feels wrong or maybe inauthentic.
Good question. That's a really common misunderstanding. It's not about blindly agreeing with the substance or the outcome. It's about agreeing to the reality that the idea exists and you're going to engage with it constructively.
So the yes is more like, okay, I hear you. That's on the table.
Precisely. It validates the other person's contribution. The and is where the skill comes in, where you add, redirect, expand, or build constructively. Think about the alternative. Yes, but.
Which usually means no.
Pretty much. It shuts down collaboration. Yes, and keeps the door open, avoids arguments right off the bat, and, fosters actual co-creation instead of opposition.
Okay, I could definitely see the value there, making interactions smoother.
Yeah.
And the sources mentioned using this even in really sensitive situations.
Oh, absolutely. Think about a therapist or a doctor with a patient who's, say, having a panic attack. Using yes and allows them to first acknowledge the patient's reality. Yes, I see you're feeling incredibly distressed right now.
Validating their feeling.
Exactly. And then collaborate on what happens next, and let's figure out a plan together for the next few minutes. It makes listening active and forward-looking.
Right. So practicing this mindset, this yes and thing, in a safe, maybe even fun improv workshop environment, what specific skills carry over into, say, a high-pressure job?
Well, the list is pretty long. Obvious ones are active listening, being able to adapt when things go sideways because you're constantly practicing reacting constructively to the unexpected.
Like when the script just goes out the window.
Totally. And making quicker decisions under pressure. But maybe the biggest one is developing a much higher tolerance for uncertainty. And let's face it, uncertainty is everywhere in demanding jobs, right? Medicine, business, engineering.
Okay, this is where it gets, for me, really interesting. We've got the theory, yes and helps collaboration, fine. But taking that from a team-building exercise to actually treating a clinical disorder like stuttering, that feels like a massive jump. How does that work?
It does seem like a leap, but let's look at stuttering therapy. It affects roughly 1 in 100 people in Australia, for instance. It often comes with huge anxiety, really damages confidence.
And the traditional therapy isn't always sticking.
Sadly, no. The relapse rates after standard speech therapy can be really high. I think 30%, sometimes up to 60%. Often, it seems, because the underlying anxiety isn't fully addressed.
Wow, 30 to 60% relapse. Yeah. So how does improv tackle this? Because it seems paradoxical, right? Asking someone anxious about speaking to perform spontaneously?
It is the paradox, but that's kind of why it works, within the right supportive structure. There are programs like Unscripted Confidence in South Australia or Break the Blocks at Northwestern Uni running group improv sessions.
Group sessions, okay.
Yeah. And the spontaneous performance within that safe group actually helps them confront and overcome the fear associated with speaking.
So it's less about getting the words perfectly smooth and more about the feeling while speaking.
Exactly. The pressure to be perfectly fluent is lifted. They learn, as the researchers put it, to be okay with failure in this non-judgmental space. And crucially, the focus shifts away from the mechanics of speech, the stutter itself, and onto communication as a whole.
So like eye contact, body language, actually connecting with the other person.
Precisely. Are you present? Are you listening? Are you conveying your message effectively, even if it's not perfectly smooth? The goal changes from fluency perfection to authentic, confident connection.
That reframing, focusing on connection over mechanics feels huge.
And it's proving effective in other areas too, like with neurodivergent individuals, particularly those dealing with social communication challenges. Think autism spectrum disorder.
Right, you mentioned ASD programs.
Yeah, like Indiana University's Camp Yes And. They use improv games specifically designed to immerse teens with social learning difficulties and activities that teach vital social skills.
Okay, what kind of skills are we talking about there? Beyond just general confidence building.
Things like understanding someone else's perspective, the back and forth of conversation, reciprocity, and a big one, reading nonverbal cues. Body language, tone of voice.
The stuff that's often not explicitly taught.
Exactly. There's this one game they mentioned called Stone Face. One person has to stand totally still, blank expression. The others try to make them laugh just by saying one simple word, maybe banana or pizza.
Just the word, no actions.
Well, they can use any tone of voice, gesture, body language they want while saying the word.
Wow, that sounds surprisingly difficult.
Yeah.
But I guess it forces everyone to focus entirely on how the word is said, the emotion, the nonverbals, not just the word itself.
You got it. They're learning to map vocal tone and physical expression onto emotional meaning in real time. It's a really practical way to practice decoding those subtle social signals, which naturally brings up a really important point. If improv is doing all this good stuff for patients and clients, what about the people delivering the care? The therapists, the doctors, the nurses? How does it help them, especially in those super high-stress environments?
Yeah, that's critical. We talk a lot about patient outcomes, but clinician burnout, stress, compassion fatigue, those are huge issues. If the providers aren't okay, the system struggles.
Absolutely. And this is where we see these transdisciplinary training models emerging, sometimes called HPTI, Health Professional Training Improv.
HPTI.
It brings together students from different fields, medicine, SLP, nursing, and pairs them with professional improv facilitators and often drama students too.
Interesting mix. Are they just doing standard role-playing with actors pretending to be patients, like the standardized patient stuff we usually hear about?
They take that idea and, improvise on it, instead of standardized patients who follow a strict script.
which can feel a bit robotic sometimes.
Right. They use what they call improvisational patients. These are often the drama students trained in improv. So they're authentic, they react realistically, they adapt.
Ah, so if the medical student makes a mistake or says something awkward, the improvisational patient can react naturally, forcing the student to think on their feet and recover, like real life.
Exactly like real life. It allows for much more realistic practice with those messy, complex relational issues. Things like dealing with an anxious family member or navigating a misunderstanding with a patient. Situations where there's no simple technical fix, but you need heaps of empathy and quick adaptive thinking.
Sense. And the impact on the clinicians themselves you mentioned, there's actual data on this, not just anecdotes.
Oh yeah, solid quantitative data. There was a study at the University of Delaware specifically looking at SLP clinicians and students who went through this kind of training. They measured a couple of key things afterwards.
Okay, like what?
First, the confidence. They used something called the clinical self-efficacy inventory, basically, how capable they felt doing their job.
Did it go up?
It jumped significantly by over 10%, 10.33% to be exact after the workshop. That's a big boost in feeling competent and prepared.
10% gaining confidence, that's definitely substantial.
Yeah.
But what about the stress factor, the anxiety we were talking about? Did it help with that?
It did, and just as dramatically. Their scores on a standard measure, the negative perceived stress scale, dropped by almost 15%, 14.91%. They felt significantly less stressed.
Wow.
But here's where it gets really compelling, I think. They didn't just rely on questionnaires, on self-reporting.
This is the biology part, right? The stress hormone.
Exactly. They measured cortisol levels, the classic biological marker for stress, from saliva samples.
And what did the cortisol show?
It showed a consistent pattern. Cortisol levels were lower at the end of each workshop day compared to when they started that morning. And looking across the whole workshop, levels were significantly lower on the final day, day 4, compared to day 1.
Wait, hold on. So the training itself, the act of doing these improv exercises, was physiologically reducing their stress response throughout the workshop. It wasn't just making them feel better mentally. It was changing their body chemistry.
That's what the data suggests. Think about what that means. A clinician who is biologically less stressed is likely going to be more resilient to burnout, better able to think clearly under pressure.
And probably provide better, more empathetic care.
Almost certainly. It's like it equips both the mind and the body to handle the inherent pressures of clinical work. It really backs up what one student participant said, that the training helped them remember that humanity plays a critical role in the medical field, helping them put ourselves in the patient's shoes.
Okay, so bringing this all together, what does it mean for, the rest of us? So someone prepping for a tough negotiation, maybe leading a project team, or frankly, just wanting to be a bit sharper in everyday interactions. These improv skills seem highly transferable.
Absolutely. The professional takeaways are really clear because at its core, improv is training habits of collaboration. Think about the workplace. It encourages deeper listening and that crucial skill of making your colleagues look good.
Making your colleagues look good. I like that phrasing. It feels like the direct opposite of, office politics or trying to score points.
It really is. When you apply that yes and principle genuinely, you're actively looking for ways to lift up your collaborator's contribution. It shifts the whole dynamic from competition to collective problem solving. You also see teams using related improv rules like if this, then what, to actually game out business scenarios seriously, which speeds up strategic thinking.
And it must make dealing with unexpected curveballs easier, right? Like getting grilled in a Q&A session you weren't quite ready for.
Definitely. You develop a mental habit of connecting dots quickly, reacting constructively rather than freezing up. Because you've practiced doing just that over and over in a low-stakes setting. A lot of people chalk it up to just building the simple bravery to put yourself out there.
But maybe the biggest shift is less about specific techniques and more about culture, especially around mistakes.
I think so. That core improv lesson of celebrating failure, or at least reframing it, is incredibly valuable. In an improv scene, if something goes wrong, it's not actually wrong. It's just the new reality of the scene. It becomes an opportunity, a gift you use to move forward.
Which must lower the fear of trying new things.
Exactly. It chips away at that fear of failure that can totally stifle creativity and learning, especially in really competitive work environments.
And fascinatingly, it seems to even impact how we structure our thoughts and communicate. You mentioned research showing cognitive benefits for teens doing improv. affecting their writing skills.
Yeah, that was interesting. Compared to a control group doing traditional scripted theater writing, the teens who took improv courses actually scored significantly higher on coherence in their written stories.
So, like how logically the story flowed and held together.
Precisely. Which makes perfect sense if you think about it, right?
Yeah.
Yes and is fundamentally about building logical connections between ideas, creating a coherent narrative, whether you're speaking it or writing it down.
Wow. So wrapping this up, it's clear applied improv is way more than just, funny games. We've seen it used as a powerful tool backed by science for everything from treating communication disorders and lowering actual biological stress in doctors.
All the way to making teams collaborate better and even improving how clearly we structure our thoughts and stories.
It really reframes communication, doesn't it? Moves it away from being just a rigid technical skill you have to get right towards something much more flexible, human, and co-created.
It does. And maybe here's a final thought for you, Ichiwan. We heard that medical training is now actively bringing in improv experts and psychologists specifically to avoid training, quote, robots.
Right, to keep the humanity in it.
So consider this. What if you consciously applied just those two core principles, yes and maybe celebrating failure at the very start of your next big challenge at work, maybe for the first, say, 20 minutes of a really tough planning meeting? What if you committed to genuinely saying yes and to every idea offered just to see what happens?
Intentionally prioritizing adaptation and creativity over just shooting things down immediately.
Exactly. Just try it. It might fundamentally change how that challenge unfolds, maybe even shift the whole outcome for the better.
That's the beauty of improv. It's not just about being funny. It's about being human. What started as comedy training has become a powerful framework for empathy, adaptability, and connection in hospitals, classrooms, and boardrooms alike. If this inspired you, remember, the best way to use AI creatively is to feed it with what you already know. Build your knowledge base, then let tools like Notebook LM help shape the story you want to share. If you enjoyed this episode, hit like, subscribe on my YouTube channel, or follow this podcast wherever you listen. Until next time, keep saying yes and.